Nobody's eating. Nobody's cooking. Need that no. That's fucking yummy. We always gotta look like mess with it for some reason.
Greetings, Facebook Live family. Wait on y'all to come on in here. Starting off just a little bit later, give you some time. We know 9 o'clock is a busy time, and so the True Love Movement Hour, we're not always on time, we're always in time. And never out of time. So, let's see how this thing looks.
Today is the 8th.
Today is the 8th. Today is actually the anniversary of the slave revolt, 1811. Charles Day's Long Days that happened. That was the most effective, nearly successful slave revolt in America. So, got a couple of folks joining us. What's going on, Shantice?
All right.
Yes.
Greetings, my sisters.
What's happening? Greetings, family. Let some folks know who need to see this. Got that there. Share it out a little bit. What's going on, Natasha?
All right.
Thank you all for joining us. I know we're getting started just a little bit later. But I think that's all right. Appreciate y'all's, patience and hanging out, waiting. Let's see here. This is the second True Love Movement Tuesday of the year.
Yes.
I don't know, we got it popping on New Year's Day, Mama Fire, last week, a week ago today,
Yeah.
Starting this thing off right. We are 1 week into 2019. What a week. What a 7 days. You need water?
I got water right over there.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. So we're going to get it started once I get my life together right here, family. So. All right, family, we got some folks in here. So we're going to go ahead and get it going. We won't be all night, and we appreciate you joining. Tonight's True Love Movement Tuesdays, we're going to jump into it and jump out of it too. But tonight's is going to be, the topic is saving face. For the True Love Movement Tuesdays this January 8th, 2019. As Mama Fi and I were talking before we got started, today is the anniversary of the 1811 slave revolt here that was coming to New Orleans, very, very near to New Orleans, and one of the most successful, as far as successful slave revolts are concerned, in the history of this nation. And most of our folks don't even know anything about. So take some time after the True Love Movement Hour to look into that slave revolt with a brother by the name of Charles Day's Long Days, who was a Haitian brother who had organized with some brothers here in New Orleans, and sisters, presumably, to get free. New Orleans has a long history of being warriors, so yeah, that's today. That's today.
Rising Power family.
Right on. Okay. Just titling up this last little piece. Saving face. So tonight's show, you know, there's been a lot happening, Mama Fire, huh?
Yeah.
And yeah, that's right, Cypher. A lot happening. And this topic was something that actually we had talked about before the new year, saving face. It was inspired by, like many other things, real life events happening, you know, here with us in that True Love movement, and us here personally, the family. And we thought it'd be a good topic because we know it's something that our people typically do. We learn saving face. Does everybody know what saving face is, first of all? Y'all heard that before? Saving face. That way we gotta make sure we all speak in the same language here. I sent you all a message to the link in reference of a conversation of what me and my father were talking about. Okay, you know about that, I guess, right? Sister Shantice, Denise. We'll check the links, sis. We will.
Yes.
Definitely. We got Trisha Jones. What's going on, Trisha? Joining us tonight also. So, would you like to say anything about anything, sliding?
I'm sliding. Yeah.
Okay. So saving face, we know with all the stuff that's happening. We, shout out to everybody who joined us for the True Love Movement album on Saturday, where we talked about the documentary that we didn't see and how to survive that. If you missed that, that's on the True Love Movement our YouTube channel. There's a whole lot of talk about that. We've said, what we're gonna say about that officially. And it's not that we're moving on to something else, but we spend a lot of our time, dealing with and around sexual trauma with our people.
Yeah.
On a, from a work standpoint and from a personal standpoint. So we're very well acquainted with that, and that is an ongoing struggle for our people. It's interesting that now there's a lot of attention and traction about it, but this is a conversation that is something we've been talking about and dealing with for a very, very long time, because it's something that our people are plagued with, and we know that's part of the ramifications of slavery.
And what we're hoping is that the conversation won't just fall flat like it usually does when there's a big explosion of some media that everybody talks about. Within a week or so, it's over. Right. Nobody's talking about victims or survivors. Nobody's talking about perpetrators anymore. And, I think talking about it is important. I think, but our people are like that. It's like one big thing and then it's over.
That's right.
Yeah. So.
That's right. And so we do expect there to be some fatigue at some point because we, a lot of things have already been said, a lot of emotions out there, and we kind of see our people losing the ability to really reckon with a lot of this because it brings up a lot of things, a lot of pain, a lot of hurt, a lot of memories, and the fact that it resonates with so many of us is proof that this isn't some isolated incident or something that just happened, that this connects with our people because our people are experiencing this. And so, of course we want to be sensitive to that, but we also want to do something. And, I think that's a good segue for tonight's show, Saving Face, Mama Fire, because a lot of this has to do with how it looks and how we look. We know that we are very concerned as black folks with how it is that we look, very concerned. And so we do understand. That's heard something. We do understand that the way people perceive us has a lot to do with how we move through the world, right, Mama Fire?
Definitely.
And so we put a lot of energy and attention on that because that is one of the things that we can access. We can kind of access how we look, whether we're talking about how we're dressed or what our style is or whatever the case is. We can actually affect that and access that in ways that some of the internal work that we have to do requires a little bit deeper of a dig. Is that,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, I think also when we talk about saving face, we're talking about putting on a front or putting on a mask.
Okay.
You know, here comes that we wear the mask. We talked about that last week.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the fake shit that we do in order to be perceived as we have it all together.
Right.
You know, and when we're doing personal work, that doesn't move you from A to B. Is to pretend. And I think one of the first things I did was, you know, was like, I'm not pretending no more. You know, I'm gonna just show all the ugliness and all the realness and all the beauty. That's okay. And all the beauty too. You know, just be my authentic, wonderful self. But saving face is something I feel like I learned from my parents.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, like, you know, fix yourself up. Get yourself together. Like,
make that first impression that they talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Pretend like we're one big happy family, and nobody has to know that shit is falling apart on the inside.
Right.
You know?
That's right. That's right. And I think many of you all, if you are joining us now, we're talking about saving face, particularly those of you who are in that, I don't know, 30 to 45, 50 range or older. You know a thing or two about that, how your people would tell you, make sure you're presentable. You dig? Make sure you are speaking a certain way. Make sure, because they understood that was currency. They understood that if you were perceived a certain way, you could get some mobility, you can get some access. You can also distance yourself or differentiate yourself from some of your other brothers and sisters who may not be doing that. So I know.
And I think we all do it to a certain extent,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah, I mean, but that's part of our socialization. I mean, I think culturally, that's something that, you know, we learn to do, and we learn to act, because this is about acting.
Yeah,
essentially, this is about acting. You know how people say act right. They don't say be right. They tell you to act right. So we learn to become very good actors, and we are often rewarded for our ability to act good or act well. And we lose whatever truth was in that because we know nobody ain't really interested in seeing that, because that might not be as pretty, it might not be as, how they say, polished.
Yeah.
It might not be as white seeming or white culture adjacent. A lot of things that go into that, and it happens in a very subtle way. And for example, even like now with what even like now with what the documentary has brought out in people. You know, a lot of people are concerned about how they're interacting or responding because they're being perceived a certain way. And it isn't that they don't feel a certain way, but they don't want to be perceived in a way that isn't favorable, because they want people to like them and appreciate them. They want people to respond to them in a certain way, even though they may have some thoughts or some feelings that are possibly controversial in this moment. So saving face is dishonest, and it creates a culture of dishonesty, and it doesn't move us any closer to the truth of who we are. So we definitely ain't getting no nearer to our humanity in the guise or under the guise, Mama Fire, of saving face. What you say?
I agree. You know, and then I guess to the extent of how fake we are or not true, you know, I was thinking about the word truth in relationship to the word trust. Which our people have, you know, we have a lack of trust for one another.
Right.
We have a lack of trust for one another, and you know, if we being fake, we think everybody else is being fake too.
Fake. That's right.
You know, and to a certain extent, oh man, we saving face right now. You know, in a way. Cause it's like
break that down for our folks. If y'all listen, Mama Five was saying, in a way, we're saving face right now. So let's look at real time what we're talking about with saving face. Now, what do you mean that we're saving face right now, Alpha?
I mean that, you know, truly, I'm struggling, and I've been struggling for the last couple of days. And so, you know, I made a commitment to the True Love Movement hours. True Love Movement Tuesdays. But I'm like tired. I'm tired, and the puppy is barking, and you know, I think I'd rather be doing something else. But I'm here, and I'm like, you know,
right.
And so, I guess it's rooted in not wanting to disappoint or wanting to honor commitments.
Right.
You know, wanting to show up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and those kind of things, and so. Is it fake? No, I'm not being fake.
Right.
You know, but there's a part of me that's also not being 100% real. Like, you know,
right.
I don't know. You know, part of it is I'm like, Brother Shay, will you hold the show down? You know, and he's like, yeah, I'll do it. So, you know, it's when are we going to decide to be 100% real? Right. With everything. Right. With everything we're feeling, everything, you know. But this world, we weren't born into this world like this. It has molded us into these characters, or and not really, but into the people that
we're presenting.
You know, part of every opportunity is showing up. Right. You know, and sometimes maybe you don't feel like 100% showing up. Maybe you need to show up for yourself in some other way, but. Yeah, I mean, what do you think, Brother?
No, I love it. I'm glad that you disclosed that. That's what I wanted. Of course, I knew it, but I wanted you to tell it because it's your truth, and you got to tell it how you tell it. And I wanted also. I'm glad you did that because people need to see what this is in real time. That we're not preaching or talking about you people and these people and our people. We talking about our damn self. Like it's the way we save face because. Like you were saying, you know, hey, we promoted the show. So, because I was like, hey, listen, we can postpone this or we can cancel this because I love me the most. I love you, right? And self-love and self-care look like saying, if this ain't gonna happen, then this ain't gonna happen. And I can live and die with that. But we said, no, we're gonna go ahead and do what we said we were gonna do because it is important. Yes. We have folk that are going to be tuning in, who like to engage and listen or watch, and respect what we're saying as we respect your position in your analysis on things, and so this is part of our relationship with our community. Our doing this and saying that we would do this, and so saving face looks like I guess we're gonna do it in spite of like you're saying about. Tired and about all these other things that are happening, and it's something that we all do if we're going to make it here in America. Like America is not ever interested in how you really feel. Like nobody don't really want to know. Look how we lie. How often do we lie and bullshit? Hey, how you doing? Oh, I'm fine. Whole world be falling apart. Mm-hmm. Everything be fucked up. Oh, I'm good. You need everything good? I'm good. Like we don't even think about it because we know the people who are asking us are not really sincere most of the time, unless we have a certain kind of relationship. Now, they don't really want to know how we're doing because if we start talking about how we're really doing and what's really wrong and what we really need, you're gonna say, well, nobody don't want to hear all that. That's
right. And America is the biggest lie. Right. It's the biggest bullshit lie, as far as saving face is concerned. Definitely. There are people, we were reading something the other day from a black man saying that this is still the greatest nation on the planet, you know, in the world. Sure. And part of that is like, America saving face and pretending as if everything is all good. Right. But the foundation of America is trash. You know what I'm saying? So we're getting it from somewhere. And I like how Shanti said, don't look like what you're going through is what I was always told. Mm-hmm. Yeah, don't look like what you're going through.
That's right. And Tracy says, yes, it crushed me when my daddy said I was embarrassing him by being homeless when I was sleeping in my car due to the black mold in their house. It's, it's hardship.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And that's a heavy one right there, because many times and oftentimes a lot of this saving face and bullshitting that we do is really to our own detriment. But that it's so important for people to perceive us a certain way, and we put a lot of energy and time into that. Yeah, another way saving face becomes real is that we don't want to upset people.
Yeah.
So oftentimes we're dishonest because we want people to like us, and we want people to be favorable to us, and it's really it's a funny kind of ritual because they know. You know what I'm saying? Like when if you work a job or you got an employer and you come back from your day off, they know you don't fucking want to be there. You know what I mean? It ain't like you say, oh, hey, how's it going? Or everything's great. Like, they know, but no one's going to really talk about that, because if you say, you know what, I would rather be somewhere else. I would rather be home with my family. I would rather be with my children. Whatever the case is, if you say that, you already know they're going to help you go home and be with your family, but you ain't going to make no money. So America co-ops folks into being dishonest, creating this dishonest culture. And black folks simply mimic the dominant culture, whatever the dominant culture does. We may be more honest with each other than with those people from the dominant culture, but we're still not even being all the way real with one another. So, and we're pointing this out because, when these kinds of things happen, when people are having these larger communal conversations about things that we think are really important issues about other folk that's outside of us, that's when all of the fake shit come up, because you can't be real if you ain't really never practiced being real. You know what I'm saying, Mama Fire? You give all the standard answers, the standard responses, and people kind of be feeling like you faking and you bullshitting, but they're not going to challenge you on that because they understand that you saying what you saying for a reason. Now, what we're saying here is our inability to be comfortable enough to be real enough with people is a reflection of us not being comfortable enough to be real with ourselves.
Yeah.
See, that there's a bold thing for 2019. If you want to do something different, leave that bullshit in 2018. But it's difficult to do that because we have done that our entire lives. When your parents tell you, like Sister Tracy Elizabeth was saying, make sure you don't embarrass me, right? Make sure that you this, that, and the third. That sticks with us. We want to please folk. You was that? Oh.
Yeah, and let me say this. I think I had been asleep for some time, so in my mind I told myself that I have rested for one, and two, Spirit told me to take every opportunity this year. And you can take that anyway, but I feel like 2019 is a time that I do need to show up, and both of us need to show up in a way that says yes, we can hold this up, but I'm not gonna sit up here and be like, hi, I'm not gonna sit up here and pretend as though I'm feeling 100%, and really and truly I haven't really felt 100% since Saturday's show. Mm-hmm. Saturday's show was tough. For me, laying it out like that has repercussions. Being absolutely raw has its repercussions. Plus, all of the things you're seeing, like all that stuff on social media is very, very triggering.
Right.
And it triggered me and triggered my sisters that had to. I saw it trigger many people. Many people were saying it was too.
Right.
We still haven't even watched the documentary.
Right.
But it ended off with us talking about community perpetrators, talking about like calling them out and all these different things. And I sitting with that is so difficult, because it's kind of like Stockholm syndrome. It's like you want to protect the people that have hurt you, instead of calling them out. And what does calling them out look like? Like, what happens? What's the fallout to that? And so I am not the best person to call out anyone.
Right.
Definitely, because I struggle with it. you know, I've struggled with it since the beginning, since the first time that I was violated. It was just a secret. It was, you know, a terrible secret that you just don't say. And since then has been an issue. And so those who, you know, those who protect and honor and love survivors definitely need to help in the calling out. I mean, I'm interested in hearing from people. I'm interested in hearing from my sisters who are watching this.
Brothers too.
Yeah, brothers
who
that
have been
are
violated.
watching. Yeah, I mean, I know it seems like we have a lot of sisters today. What does the calling out process look like? What does that really look like for our community?
Right.
We call them out and let the chips fall where they're made. You know, people who love and honor survivors call them out. You know, what and this is still in the vein of saving face.
Right.
You know, because even though I can tell my story, I still can't point them out.
Right. That's heavy. That's heavy, family. We're talking about tackling something very, very big. Like, so when you've been violated, you know, to be able to call out your abuser. You know, talking about the abuse is one thing, but calling out the abuser is another thing. And for the reasons why many folk who saw the documentary and who were triggered by the documentary recall, because you're not believed. People want you to convince you. You have to relive the situation again and again and again. There's all kinds of reasons why people stay silent, don't talk about it, won't talk about it, but at the same time they don't afford themselves, you know, full-on healing, because whoever the abuser was or abusers were are able to go about their thing, and in many cases not necessarily even knowing that they violated. There are some cases where people are so comfortable with this kind of behavior, they don't necessarily even recognize that they have violated somebody. It's a cultural thing. It's absolutely and every bit of a cultural thing. And so we think that this is a great opportunity, since we're having this caliber of conversation, that we should talk about it all. And we've established that, you know, America has never, ever liked. As a matter of fact, America has always despised those women and girls who are now politically designated as black, who were once, you know, enslaved African women and girls, and now, you know, black women and girls. America has always had a very tense relationship with that. And I have a book coming out, Resolving Rape Culture. We're going to look at that in the book, so I'm not going to talk a whole lot about that. But I'm just bringing that up to say that it isn't something new that just happened. So given the fact that we got this momentum of 400 years in America under these kinds of conditions, it's just popping up in places, and we're just, because we've only been off the plantation for 154 years, we're just really coming to a point where we can publicly reckon with some of this, where we can publicly struggle with some of this shit. You know what I mean? Like some of the things that have happened to us, to ask each other questions. I mean, look, family, y'all know, y'all who travel around and get around the world, or the United States, but particularly the world, have you ever noticed that you can be anywhere in the world, black folks greet each other with a question. We say, what's happening? And that's deep. We don't say hello, hi, we say what's happening. That is in my estimation a very deep thing. There's a very deep understanding that they got some shit going on. And I ain't too sure about it, but I know something is happening, and I'm hoping that maybe you know it, because that's how we greet each other. So there is a desire for some resolution and for justice amongst all black people, and particularly the black woman who has been violated by everyone, including other black people and the black man. And so this is a very special case, you know, family. So what are your thoughts? Let's see here. Ranika said, I think about it all the time, but what happens when you call somebody out but nothing changes in the community except people know you've been violated? What happens when you're watching the community act like they don't know what you've already exposed? That's a great question, family.
Yeah.
You know,
And that's part of the reason why we don't tell. I mean, if you told and you weren't believed, what you ain't gonna never tell again.
right?
And then you're talking about how we answer, our call and response to each other when we're greeting each other. I noticed another one is be cool.
Be cool.
Be
That's
cool.
my shit.
But I mean, Brother Shay, that's what I've learned. I've learned to be cool. Don't say nothing. You know what I'm saying? Don't do nothing.
Right.
Just sit back and be cool, kind of thing. Don't make no waves.
Right.
So be cool is another one. And I feel that what Ronika is saying. I feel that, like what's the use? What's the use of saying some stuff? You exposing suckers, for doing what they've done, and people will go to bat for the brothers, all women. People will go to bat for the perpetrators, and that's even more harmful. That's like a double hurt,
right?
And that's what I told you from the beginning when it first happened. Like all he's gonna say is he didn't do it, or I was taking it wrong or something like that, And Brother Shaky said maybe they didn't even know what they were doing, but you grown men, you got children and daughters and stuff like that. You know what you're doing,
right.
And then does it help, like when you get it off your chest and say this happened? Does it really change that it happened, or really change the impact of it happening?
That's right.
I'd like to believe that all the women who spoke about R. Kelly had a brick, or a boulder, taken off their backs. But I don't know.
Well, Trisha says, I grew up hearing what will people think, as if what's mostly important, if that's what's mostly important. But what do we think of ourselves? It's the question to ponder on. It also contributes to hiding the violations. Exactly.
Yeah.
And to your point, so here is what I say: somebody who hasn't violated a black woman or a black girl. Here is what I'll say: what happens if we don't? Like, what happens? What are the ramifications of sisters walking around holding all this hurt in, protecting these abusers, right? And they're suffering. See, what we do know is, and we're very well acquainted with it, is how that affects particularly black women who are survivors on how they engage in relationships with everyone, right? From their children to their partners, intimate partners, folks that it's just the way they engage with people. There is years ago, it was happening so frequently in some schools that I was asked to come in and talk with the young brothers about sexual harassment, them not knowing what that is, and also sexual abuse. I just added that in there to get an understanding. And so one of the things that I was talking to these brothers about was, it's heinous because it was about how they're handling exchanges with young girls, and how that can impact them, how they can have an exchange with a young girl as a teenager or even preteen, and how that shift her whole trajectory for the rest of her life as she becomes a mother, and all these other things that she may become as part of her life's journey and her development, and how heinous it is because it's just that, it's just that serious of a thing. So then, just the other day when we were talking about it off air, and I realized I had said then, like I had really believed, really up to that moment, I thought very strongly about it, because I have been just every black girl and woman that I can recall that I've encountered, that I've been intimate with, had been violent, had been sexually violated at some point in their lives. Every one of them that I can recall, and there has been a consistent sort of me triggering them, or them having a flashback or something unbeknownst to me. And so that made it for me personally very heinous, because here I am paying for something that I didn't even do. But then I realized that I'm still disgusted about it because I'm having to deal with it. I'm not even disgusted about it because it happened. I'm disgusted about it because I'm having to deal with it, and I didn't do that. So that's one particular issue and one part of self-reflection for me. The second part of that was, then I started thinking, maybe that's the point of it. See, when someone is sexually violated, everybody really should feel it. And because if everybody really felt it, we would be inclined to foster and cultivate a culture where that wasn't acceptable. See, what's happening now by this happening in secret and people not exposing abusers and that kind of thing, it's still allowed to happen in secret, and it's being viewed as exceptions, and it's isolated, and it's not considered part of the normative behavior. At least on the front street, but there's a sense that people are aware that this is going on, and it's been going on, and it's having a major impact on all of us, be it directly or indirectly.
Yeah, I think everybody really does feel it. Everybody feels it in a way, but they don't know it. They don't know that this is the way it impacts people. It impacts relationships. It impacts self-esteem. They don't really know. When we talked about it on Saturday, this thing is rampant. Like, it's everywhere in every family in some way, and so you mentioned about the sexual abuse and harassment YouTube video that Brother Shaq put out there. I listened to it. I listened to it yesterday because I needed to, because I was sharing it. I had listened to it before, because it's how many years old? 2 years old?
4 or 5 years.
Okay, it's 4 or 5 years old. So I just needed to listen to it again. Everybody should listen to it, because there's no black man that is going into schools with black boys and talking to them about this. This is really important, and it's only 1 and 2. It's only part 1 and 2, and part 3 and 4 is the part that people have to invite you to finish.
It's a live workshop.
It's a live workshop, but we should be telling our men and boys at least, and because we don't even know a lot of the time what it's called and what it really is, like, it just, for me, it was just like something that happened, and I didn't really know how much it impacted me until I had to tell my family I was pregnant. I was 18 years old and I was pregnant, and I had to really come to terms with being that way. And then I was asking myself what was wrong, because I know, I lived this life, this secret life, up to the time I was 18 years old. That was just, even though I was around other runaway girls too, it just seemed like I had it worse. Like I was just so sneaky and always going out, always like sneaking out, sneaking boys in. I mean, I just was wild. And when I was 18, I had to finally say that I'm pregnant. My family went through the roof and asked me what was wrong with me, like, why you doing this, and why, and then I had to really sit down and think about why. That was the only time, from 12 to 18, I had no clue, what was really happening with me, and breaking it down to, the violation.
Right.
And then on top of that, at 18, when I was pregnant, when I said that it happened, I wasn't believed. So then that led to 10 more years of, pain and drama and all kind of stuff, until I was like, you know what, this happened to me. Whether or not somebody believes me or not, it happened, and it shows itself in my actions, in all the intimate actions that no one sees, all of the decisions, the intimate decisions that are made that no one sees, I was able to see, but it took me years and years and years to be able to. And I really like how Nzinga, my sister, says, it's unhealthy to the individual, and everyone in their circle gets the heat because of everything being bottled inside. And that's super true.
Right.
It gets by and it festers into just a sickness that, really being truthful and real helps. And for my sisters are saying, it doesn't really matter. I think about all the people I said who never hurt me, who may be also hurting other people, you know? And because I didn't say it, did they hurt people, you know?
Yeah. I mean, we
did
know
they hurt others?
We know there's definitely a likelihood of that kind of thing happening. Well, I want to say this before we go too far in with regard to saving face. I wanted to add something into the conversation that hasn't really come up yet. It's that yes, these things are happening. Yes, they have been happening for a while, and yes, there's some awareness about this. But part of what helps it continue, or at least be maintained, is that there is an appetite for it. Like this, there is an appetite for this kind of thing. Like people enjoy that power dynamic that comes along with violating other people. I don't think that was born in us, but I do think we've developed that appetite here in America in trying to mimic the dominant culture, because there's just no way that we can be in America and not get America on us. And much of what we're talking about tonight has to do with control. It has to do with power and control. And when you take a people who in America have been historically as powerless as black people, there's a certain kind of hunger to be in control and in power. And it's all fantasy, number one, for black folks, because the only folk that black folk can oppress potentially moment to moment are each other. And we know what that looks like because we attempt to do those things on a daily basis, which really is more rooted in trying to mimic the dominant culture. And so black women are particularly vulnerable and susceptible to that because there is a long history of as old as the United States itself as the black woman being specifically oppressed by everyone. And just like any other kinds of oppression or terrorism, this is witnessed. And so when you witness that there's people kind of despise the black woman, when you witness that no one's going to protect the black woman, that no one's listening to the black woman, that the black woman ain't all that important, when you're witnessing that kind of an environment, which is a national, a societal culture, when you see that, then that's socializing you on how you deal with black women. It doesn't tell you explicitly, but you do learn implicitly that ain't nothing this black woman talking about mean shit. So when she does say, hey, something happened, it's like, yeah, well, what did you do? Right? Mm-hmm. Right? Because this idea that black women shouldn't be believed, like this was created. This wasn't something that happened naturally or what have you. Did you want to add something?
Yeah, I wanted to add, thank you for the YouTube class, pretty much the sexual abuse and harassment class, because you brought it back into focus for me. As I was listening to you talk to these boys, you can actually hear the boys and their responses, which is beautiful. These are our babies, these are our boys. They're young, they're still in middle school, asking questions and telling parts of their story as well. But you orient everybody to say this is about power and control. Right. You know that when someone rapes or someone sexually violates or sexually abuses someone, it's about power. And who is, quote unquote, the lowest on the totem pole, who's the easiest to pick off as far as power is concerned? It's the black woman. Yes. It's the black woman. And so it's easy to, because we think in our minds, it's about sex. It's about the person just being so ravenous about sex and then being, like I think Tracy said something about recently I told an associate not to say sexual connotations toward me. And their response was, I can't help it. I'm just a scoundrel. Right? That means I'm just a nasty boy or whatever. It's not about sex. It's about power. It's about what you can make them do. Or what you can, and that's what it's about. Yes. And that's what it was about each time for me. And that's the part that we have to stop. When we say who did it to us, that they going around on power trips, and it's not about how attractive they found you.
Right.
You know, and we got to keep that part clear. This is about how weak they believe you are.
Right.
You know, and it's easy to take advantage of. And when I was hurt, you know, back in, when was that, 2015, Brother Shaq was right there. Yeah. He was right there. He was in the place that I was. And everybody knew we were together. And this man, you know, violated me in the space where he was. That was the audacity of him. But it may have been a power thing of jealousy, you know. I'm gonna harm Brother Shaq, think he all that. So I'm a, you know, I mean, who knows what the type of, you know, what would make somebody do that in the company of their husband, you know. And then the recent time that happened also happened with you right there, Brother Shaq. It's just, you know, crazy how these things happen. You know, I think as a child, I was left vulnerable because my parents weren't there, and you know, I was left vulnerable. I'm thinking it's because my parents weren't there, but these things happen in front of the people who love and protect and honor you.
Right. And so, family, as you hear her saying that, and she's talking about she's talking about, you know, fairly recent times, and you're thinking, well, how am I standing for that, and how am I allowing that? Well, here's the thing. Loving a black woman that has experienced sexual trauma is no small thing. And it isn't simply about a feeling, but it is about the action of loving. And so when she asked me, when she asked me to stand down, I should say, after, you know, telling me, I have to honor that. Because dishonoring that is not going to help heal the trauma. It's a very, very difficult thing to do, particularly for somebody like me, who's had a very, very violent past and is capable of being very, you know, very violent. Some of the folk, you know, who know me, who are even on the thread tonight that knew me, you know, 30 years or so ago will tell you that, you know, come a long way. But that spirit is still in there. And especially being on the side of right. But I understand in having to respect a survivor's wishes. Like, that's the real testament. So someone has already been violated, disrespected, and dishonored. If we move forward with our own ego and our own sense of justice and what justice ought to be without their support or without their consult, then what are we really doing? We're kind of adding to the oppression. We're exacerbating it. We're forcing them to look at it and say, see, that's why I didn't want to tell you. That's why I didn't want to say nothing. And so then they're right back to that moment of being violated again, because what they said ended up creating some other things for some other people. And now this has had you understand where I'm going with that. And so that's an example of how black women who have already been violated have to weigh and measure everything that they're doing. And because it has implications that are far reaching, and like I said even before she brought that up, when someone is violated like that sexually, it really does have an impact on everybody they come in contact with. We don't readily or necessarily make the connection, but it does. And so it's a very heinous thing to do that is rooted in taking the little humanity that somebody has left. And we do know statistically, most of these folk who are abusers have been abused too. You know, in very many cases, they've been abused. And when someone is abused, when someone is violated, we understand that they'll have to confront the question, why me? At some point in reckoning with the fact that this has happened. And when they're doing that, they have to decide that, hey, this is some foul shit, that I'm going to be an advocate, I'm going to make sure this never happens, I'm never going to do this, I'm going to make sure it doesn't happen around me, it never happens to me again, and so forth. Or they can become a perpetrator and say, well, this is just normal. This is just kind of what happens. This happens to everybody. This is no big deal. And, you know, it's just a thing. And that's the gateway to them going ahead and doing it, because that's part of normalizing that kind of a culture. So, you know, so much time is spent on responding to these things. Not nearly as much time is spent on preventing these kinds of things. And I suspect, Mama Fi, that's because being white-minded as we are and white-minded as we become, we're limited in thinking of how you can prevent something like this. So we want to impose shit on people. We think that imposition is the way to do it. Knowing how we feel about being imposed upon, our whole being is just being in America is an imposition for those of us who are politically designated as black. But that's what we think about power. Because as collectively as black people, we feel powerless. In order for us to have power, we got to go borrow it from another motherfucker who got it. So we got to get somebody bigger to come do something. And we're saying that there ain't no humanity in that. You can't really truly legislate, you know, good behavior and humanity. Something has to happen inside of you.
Yeah.
To understand why your sanctity and your agency is important and the most valuable, and then see other people just like yourself and recognize that, you know, look, I'm not going to violate myself. I'm not going to violate you.
And you know, Brother Shaq, thank you so much for so many things. I had to really, so I've had a whole life of it, and it stopped for years where I didn't have anything, but then started again like in my 40s. Nothing really changed. Like I didn't start wilding out or like wearing, you know, and it doesn't matter what you have on, right?
Right.
Anytime I was violated, I wasn't scantily clad. You know what I'm saying? I wasn't dressed like a whore or anything of that nature. But I had to come to terms with it recently because it was causing problems between me and Brother Shaq. And not that I didn't think he would protect me or honor me. I just it started getting wild in my head because there were 3 events that happened kind of in my 40s, you know, and I was just like, what the fuck is going on? Is this thing following me? Is this like a spirit that is trying to like overtake me or kill me? You know, and I just started feeling crazy about it. And then I started going to counseling. You know, as a counselor, we have counselors sometimes too. And when I did all my spiritual baths and I started, you know, doing all the self-care and stuff, and it wasn't really hitting that, you know, place for me where I was balanced. And so I started seeing my counselor. She was amazing because what she did for me was help me see that, for one, I'm full of sweetness, right? And in America, sweetness is weakness. And it's so easy to be violated or seen as weak, you know, to be violated when you're seen as weak. And so no wonder many of my sisters are bitter, hard, cold, you know, and we just be like, oh, she a bitch or she whatever.
Right.
She's protecting herself because as bitter and as hard as cold as you are, you ain't weak. You can't be seen as weak. Right. And so me being so loving and giving and sweet, and it's not a bad thing, right? It's actually a very powerful thing. And me having to realize that it's powerful, also my counselor helped me see that you know, the divine feminine, which includes sexuality. You know, I was talking to the little sister Amani, Black Pearl. We did the beautiful cover shoot, the photo shoot for the cover of Late Bloomer. And she said, why do we disconnect divine feminine and sexuality or being a mother and sexuality? Because to be a mother, you have to have, you know, you have to have had sex, you know, and so the queen mother, why do we disconnect that to sexuality? And that sexuality is not a nasty, bad thing. And so the counselor helped me see that I'm divinely sexual, that I have a divine sexual power in me ever since I was born. Right? A sweet sexual, and it's not nasty sexual like you thought or you this or that or the other. It's just, it sits in me. And I believe it sits in all women. Sure. You know, it sits in us, and and people try to take it. They try to take the power because it's so bright and shining and it's so alluring. And these people are perverted. They've been hurt, and they you know, and so they try to take it. And so after being with her and helping me balance out and understand, I realized I'm never going to be touched again. I know my power now, right? And I know how to control it. See, you know, when we don't know that we're divinely sexual, when we don't know that about ourselves, and, you know, sex is taboo and sex is seen as a bad thing in America. Of course, that's how we all got here. Like my sister Amani says, it's, you know, it's still seen as raunchy or bad or whatever. But knowing that I've had this power since I was a child, and it's my power to have, it's my power to wield, it's my power to protect. And so now I realize that it's untouchable. No one can touch it or harm it or hurt it anymore. Right. You know, and when that flipped for me, everything flipped. You know, yeah. I mean, I can say more, but I'll let you talk right now.
No, I mean, you're on a roll. I think that's important. I appreciate you disclosing that, because even the sisters who are appearing to be or being called thoughts and that kind of thing, as you pointed out, still possess that. It's not as evolved. It's not as evolved, and so the way that it may come out, it comes out in ways that don't bring to them the most desirable outcomes, and so that creates some other things, and then that kind of the large S of sexual power like that, you know, from a woman who is despised in America, who's disliked and not regarded very highly, to have that kind of power, you know, men want to control that, because that can make a man uncomfortable when a woman is in possession of that kind of sexual power. Because whenever we're talking about power and the power dynamic in America, this is a relational thing, and the way our people have been oriented to power is that power is something that someone has over someone else. So sexual power for all black people has always been the power, a power that we can access, because it's natural, it's normal.
It's natural, you know, and it's normal. Yes,
it's natural and it's normal, and so we'll use that kind of power to have power over someone, that we can control them sexually. The fetish is not in the sex. The fetish is in the control. See, there's a hunger for control, and we don't consider that we have control over ourselves, because in many ways we do not. I mean, we talk a lot of different kinds of things about liberation and freedom and kujichagulia, but we are inside of an oppressed state.
Yes, we are.
And everything that we're thinking about and everything that we're doing and everything that we're considering is still happening inside of an oppressed state. So this isn't our natural habitat. We don't even know what our nature is. We have been limited for our entire lives here in America by whatever America will, quote unquote, allow us to do. Even this broadcast, even the ways in which we're talking to you about this shit, we don't control. Nobody blacks controls this. So we are always operating at someone else's pleasure. So there is a hunger for us collectively and oftentimes individually to taste that. We want to have some of that. We want to have some of that experience. And so we don't have a lot of money. We don't have a lot of resources. So we use sex, and we can access that sexual power, and it's definitely addictive. There's all kinds of things. So then it gets presumed as a bad thing, and people focus on that behavior. But I think at its core, Mama Fi, it's about control, and control over another. Also because you've been taught that you ain't nothing, and you ain't nothing inside of you worth nothing. So you're always looking outside of yourself for validation, reaffirming, reaffirmations, and all these other things. So there's a lot of seeking of power outside of the self as opposed to looking inside the self, because somebody's already told you ain't shit in there. You ain't about to find nothing. So I think when you put all those things together, you can easily have some sexually deviant kinds of behaviors, all in the name of trying to reconnect with your own humanity. But when reconnecting with your humanity violates somebody and takes theirs, you're not really doing that. You're doing some other shit. You're doing some heinous shit. That is what we've been talking about. And then the people who you do it to are still trying to save face, their own and yours.
Yes.
So we, the sexual people who violate folks sexually, they know they're co-opting people at the same time. And that adds to the power dynamic.
Yeah.
Because, hey, I done did you something, and you know and I know, and it's our secret, and you ain't gonna tell nobody because ain't nobody gonna believe you, number one, and you ain't fixing to do nothing. So they can enjoy that sense of momentary superiority. But listen, one thing I do know, and for the folk who have violated you, who are still alive, they're only alive because you said. That's important. That when people make these kinds of decisions, they don't even understand what they're doing in terms of how they're playing with their lives. And we know their families need them and could miss them and all those kinds of things. So these people they got people who are alive simply because black women are not saying anything. So if you're watching this and you know who you are, if you're watching this, understand that if you have violated folk and you have made it and you're alive, it can catch up with you. I'm just saying, it can catch up with you because that's somebody's humanity, man. I mean, that's the foulest thing you can do is take somebody's humanity. And because it happened to you isn't justification to do it to other folk. Because we know we got a whole lot of that happen, right, Mama Fire? Mm-hmm. I mean, we got a whole lot of people who got some horrible, heinous things that they've experienced, and now they've unleashed onto the world the same kinds of behavior. And all because something happened to them. So you see how something happening to somebody that we don't even know, that we're not necessarily connected to, can still affect us because we may encounter somebody who they've encountered. You see how that works? So we really do all feel it directly or indirectly, which makes it all of our problem. The question becomes, is our focus and emphasis going to be on after the fact, or are we going to look into some real prevention that isn't an imposition, but cultivating something inside the hearts and minds of our own people for who they are individually and then who we are collectively, Mama Fire, I think is the question.
Yeah. And so, I think Trisha said Oshun's honey, Oshun's honey, talking about the sweetness and, whenever you say mama is sexual.
Yep.
Mama, that's how she becomes a mama, is being sexual. That's how she becomes somebody's mother, and such a divine, beautiful thing, queen, goddess, mother that I could call them. So I'm about to call out one of the people that hurt me. His name is Peter Nakid, and he is a photographer here in New Orleans. He's an older man, and I want my sisters to stay away from him. And I never said his name ever to anyone, maybe a couple of 2-3 of my sisters. And the sisters that I told have always been like, yeah, he's a creep. He does this, and one of my sisters told me that. So he rampant with it in the New Orleans community. He is a photographer, and he uses that as a weapon. He uses that as a tool to hurt people. And he violated me. and calling them out.
Right on. And it's
no more saving face.
It's a shame too, because he and I were close at one time, and I would never have expected that. You know, never have expected that. I never saw that coming. I can't even tell you about the rage, but really the disappointment too, that someone would do that. And but hey, you know, you said it, and that's what it is. And so, you see how that works, family? It's controversial. You know what I'm saying? It's controversial, but sisters are walking around with all of these secrets, right? With all of these things that people have done. And then they're responding, they're acting a certain way out in public, and so we're like, well, why she tripping? Why she acting like that? You know what I'm saying? Like, I've seen many sisters in different spaces, you know, change their whole demeanor, their whole everything when certain people walk in the room. So, you know, they got to have some history there. It's not always a sexual violation, but I'm just saying we
maybe some other sort of violation.
Maybe some other sort of violation. So we look at the sister and we say, we look at her behavior. We don't consider what happened though. What happened before that? I mean, I'm convinced my own mother was a sexual abuse survivor. And I don't even know from who, family. And I know how that affected her ability to parent me. And I also know how that caused me, that experience caused me to really have a lot of tension and really not like my mom. I didn't know the history. I did not know the history of what had happened to her. I just knew how it impacted me. And I was focused on that because that's what we do. We focus on ourselves, right? And so it took so many, I mean, up until the day she died, I was still salty with her because I felt that she had deprived me of things in terms of my relationship with my father, you know, all of those things. And I never even gave any thought to what happened to her, though, and what that does to a person. You see, that's what makes this so heinous, because it really does affect the way people see the world and then how people respond to them. And then when that happens, like what you were just saying, when somebody tells, then somebody's going to say, well, that didn't really happen. Or did that really happen? Or are you sure? You know, that kind of shit. Like,
and alienate you. Now you're not invited to this and
right.
that, and yeah.
So people make all kinds of adjustments because they want to save face. People, and particularly black women, they sit around because they don't want to upset nobody. Because people don't want to listen to them anyway. People don't want to hear what black women got to say. They don't believe black women, and nobody don't want to listen to that shit. When she does say something, it's fucked up because people are, it's and they've heard it again and again and again and again and again. You mentioned about being sexually violated and you know, loving your mother, and she didn't believe you.
My mother was, you know, just an amazing mama. She was the best mama I ever known. You know, we always love our mamas like that, but no, she, you know, sweet and attentive and great, but no, she didn't believe me. And I think about how you know, Baba Peter was somebody that provided photos for Will Manifest. You know, he was always there. He would show up. He would do it for free sometimes, and he you know, all we had to do was call him, and he would show up. And if y'all notice, people lately, I mean, we haven't had him around us in years and years and years because we booed him up, and you know, he knows. I mean, you know, but I want to say that, big breath. I want to say that it's time that our community stood up and said no more, you know, and listen, I can only do one at a time. Because I think about my life when I was shining brightly, really, really brightly as a child. You know, I remember I can see pictures of myself when I was 5, you know, and I had these big smiles and, you know, I was just shining. And then I saw from the time I got violated myself cave in, you know, and all the smiles became little, you know, I like sat in the background of myself. You know, I started getting chubbier. I started, you know, just dimming down my light.
Yep.
Long as my light was dim, y'all, I was never violated. Long as I had my light turned down for years, but I was wilding. I was hurting myself at that point. You know, I was hurting all through those years. I was hurting myself. Then I decided to emerge, you know, as the beautiful mama, the beautiful queen, the beautiful honey, Oshun goddess, you know, and then I began getting touched again, you know, and violated. And so what my counselor showed me is that I have to be in control of that from now on. And yes, shine as bright can be. Shine bright like that. But also have, you know, have control over it. I don't know if it makes sense to anyone else who is listening, but I guess we can be out there loose, maybe. Right. You know, be out there, and then not loose like loose women or like a hoe or anything like that, but be out there not wielding the power, you know, and just kind of I don't know how to describe it, but I know when she told me that I have to have control over all of that, and that decide that no one is going to take it from me, and that no one is going to touch me ever again. I knew what that was. And I knew what I would have to do. And haven't had any of those issues since then. And won't. I will not stand for it. I will not take it. It will not come and try to take any of anything. And so that's where I am now. Sad that I have to call people out, people with wife and families. You know, he's not the only one either. And sad that I have to be placed in this position. Sad that I have to witness on social media all these women saying it happened to me, it happened to me, it happened to me, it happened to me. But I don't feel disempowered though. I don't feel like I don't have my power and I'm not going to be okay. I know I'm going to be okay.
You're going to be all right.
Yeah, I know I'm going to be okay. But it's just a sad time. Like all this stuff with this R. Kelly stuff is bringing up some muck in me, you know, and people and my sisters and my brothers who are also survivors and little boys and these kind of things as well. You know, my son is also a survivor. And it's like, you know, it's heavy. It's heavy. So
this public conversation with the documentary is, you know, it's in our face, but the reason why I think so many people are talking about it and it's so much buzz is because it really is relatable. Like there's so many of these stories, so many people have been affected this way, and that's affected so many other people, and it really is dimming all of our lives. And so it's the real shame is that it has to even be this way. That's the real shame, that we are so far apart from ourselves that we are out here violating one another. We've been violated collectively as a people, and now we're violating one another. You know, it's I don't know. I don't have the words, and y'all know I have a pretty good command in English language, but there's not really a word for it because English isn't sophisticated enough to describe this type of shit. It's just shit. It's really what it is. It's just shit. But it is making us and causing us to look at the shit and look at ourselves. Look at ourselves on how we are complicit in the shit. Look at how we are not really authentically responding to the shit. You know what I'm saying? And how that can continue this shit. You know, there are so many, and I don't, so many of these experiences. I won't even call them cases, because that takes the humanity out of it. When you call it a case, or it's a case file, it takes the humanity out of it. This shit is happening to people by people, and it's typically black people. And so it puts folk on the defense, and it's, you know, not all black men, and that's true. But I can tell you, as a black man, though I haven't violated anyone, I didn't always love, honor, and respect all black women. Like, that is a real thing. I learned very young about, you know, black women, and my first introduction to that was through my mother, who had been violated. You see what I'm saying? That's how this happens. That's how this kind of thing happens. So many boys and little boys, by the time they hit teenagers, they've already decided, based on the lyrics that they hear, these hoes ain't shit. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying?
The media is a sexual violation.
Right.
The stuff we hear is a sexual violation.
And so part of that goes into, you know, being a man. And that's what men do, and that's how men talk about this shit. So it ain't like I ain't never see it like that. I really have. I was raised up in that. Like, we came up in the 70s and 80s with, you know, with gangster rap and all this other shit. And there's a soundtrack for all of that stuff, man. It didn't just start. And many of the children who are doing it now are our children, or our children's children, or children who will, you know, who came after that era. So this isn't a R. Kelly that did something that hadn't been done. He's just been a public face, and he's been, you know, whatever, lifted up. But there are people who are walking around amongst us with the same sickness, with the same tendencies, and the same behavior. And they got stories too. You know what I'm saying? Like, something happened to them that caused them to think that this is okay. And so we don't always know what the stories are. But nothing justifies violating someone else. That's the difficult thing about it, you know. Do you take your lick, or do you keep doing the shit? So, you know, it's a lot. It's a lot, family. We thank y'all for hanging in there with us. Got a lot of folks that are saying, so a lot of comments. We're gonna try to respond to them all. Checking the time out. Anything else, Mama Fire, you'd like to add? While you're doing that, I also want to say we don't want to ignore the brothers, because there are brothers, you know, who have confided and disclosed that they've been sexually violated. You know what I'm saying? And so some of this, what people are calling toxic masculinity or that kind of thing, is rooted in brothers who were violated as children, who grew up with this, I gotta show you how much man I am, and they're doing all kind of crazy shit too, to reckon with that. Don't make it all right, but all of our behaviors have history, is what we're saying. That it's not that we wake up like this, that we just cannot be in America without getting America on us. Now that we know, and what we say, Mama Fire, we've been off the plantation for 154 years now. The slave master was forcing a lot of this sick, deviant behavior. They had brothers, they had, you know, enslaved African men that were forced to have sex with all kinds of enslaved African girls and women and their wives and daughters and mothers and all those kinds of things. They were forced to do that, okay? And that was an imposition. This was done for the pleasure and the entertainment of the slave master and his family and other folks to see. And see, you got to remember, enslaved African men witnessed all of this stuff happening. Witnessed it happening, okay? Enslaved African men witnessed all of this happening. And so to say that has had no impact on, because that's trauma. When you watching trauma, you witnessing trauma, you are traumatized. You know, I mean, that really does come out somewhere. And it comes out multi-generationally, because we normalize the behavior with the people who are still reeling from being abused by folk in their family. and folks who were friends of the family. Like the story always sounds very, very familiar. It happens again and again and again and again and again and again. It becomes normative behavior because that's what we do as people. It takes some courage and it takes some fortitude for us to say, this kind of thing is not uplifting the humanity of individual black people or collective black folk. This is not doing that. So in terms of breaking these generational curses, we have an opportunity while we're here to if we're engaging in the behavior, stop. If we need some kind of help to stop because it's some kind of an addiction and it is in fact a sickness, get some support with that. There are all kinds of groups. There are people who do that kind of thing. We don't do that, but there are people who do that.
As far as do what? Like
as far as abuses.
Name it.
As far as abuses, yeah.
As far as perpetrators.
Perpetrators, right.
Because we help survivors,
right.
all survivors,
Definitely.
men, women, children. But as far as perpetrators are concerned, that's it's hard. It's a hard one for a survivor to do.
Right.
Help, with the perpetrators, but there are places that will help. Get help immediately. If there are some things in families where one of the children is hurting another child, another sibling, or hurting like in cousins and uncles and all that, get help for the children who have been hurt immediately. Get help. True Love Movement does that work. We will take the children and we will help them through the process of healing. And it takes time. This is not like, oh, we see them one time in this session or they'll be fine. No, because it's ugly the way it comes out. And could potentially turn that child into a perpetrator without the right amount of intervention.
Right. So that's important. So we're saying to get help to resolve whatever's happening internally, to stop the behavior, because we really can stop. I mean, if you can't stop on your own, again, get some help to stop, because it's just, all it's doing is continuing a very vicious cycle that we no longer have to endure. I mean, we've been off the plantation for 154 years, so we have to say, okay, enough of this. If this doesn't serve us, it hasn't served us. Yes, there's a lot of shame around experiencing this, talking about this, but it's even more shameful to not do anything for ourselves to change the behavior and change the trajectory of for our descendants. That's the real work. I mean, yes, we're a blip on the radar, Mama Fire. You know what I'm saying? This is in our time right now, but we're really looking at healing the multi-generational trauma within our own families. Doing that work first, then it moves out to, as we're working as a collective. Now we've got it, it's a communal type thing. And so we're fostering a kind of environment where we just don't violate each other, no kind of way. We don't do it. And so if we just don't violate each other, we don't have to try to impose things from the outside, because we all know that stuff isn't always a deterrent. It may work momentarily, but it doesn't really stop. And we are capable of stopping ourselves. But we do have to be inspired, not motivated, but inspired to. And so that leads to the final point of doing the self-work. Because if you've done that and you love yourself, you connect with your brother and your sister. You ain't gonna hurt them. You ain't gonna violate them, because that's just you. It's just you. I heard somebody say that, consider that this black woman or black girl could be your wife or your mother or your daughter or it's somebody's mother, somebody's wife, somebody's daughter, and so forth. But it's like she's somebody.
Right, she's a human being.
She's
whether
a human
or not
being.
She's somebody's daughter, wife,
right.
or mother.
It isn't. That's what I'm saying. Because even doing that is still doing a disservice and a dishonor to her as a human being that her whatever she receives is simply in relationship to someone else. That's not right. Branique is saying, questioning now as a community member who wants to be what I ask of my community, is it damaging to the victim if I directly let the perpetrator know that I will be keeping my distance because I believe these accusations and won't turn a blind eye? I mean, the thing about it is people have to make their own decisions about what to do. You know, nobody can decide for grown people what to do. Of course, if you've got children and you're responsible for them, you have to decide what's best for them. But as far as grown people go, you know, you make your own decisions. You know, it's like anything else, Mama Fi. Like, everybody won't experience everything. You know what I'm saying? Like, they got people, some people will never experience this, you know, or some people won't experience it by the same people. Like, so that's really up to the individual.
I think yes. I think you should let the perpetrator know that you know and that you do believe the victim. I say yes.
Okay. So there we go. That was the question, family, that if you know and you want to keep your distance from the perpetrator, you think, you know, you should let them know. Malphite says yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then are you also ready to hear that didn't happen? You know, because there's a lot of denial in this stuff. You know, a lot of denial. I am sure that the people who I will call out, they would say no, it didn't happen. Because it's easy to say a black woman is lying, or a black woman did this to me, or a black woman, you know, she came on to me, or whatever. It's so easy to say that because she's at the lowest, you know, as far as power is concerned, she's at the lowest place. And we know that's not true. Right. We know that's ass backwards. We know this whole thing is backwards. We know who got all the power, right? And so just be ready to hear denial.
Yeah, and that brought up a great point. Thank you for that. So now as we're zeroing in on folk who are sexual abuse survivors, right? Whether we're talking about women or men, I know we've been doing heavy focus on women, and we may do a broader focus on men too, because this isn't disqualifying or discrediting, you know, black boys and black men. That's a whole nother kind of thing in terms of talking about that, reporting that, and how that really shakes out. But just to stay where we are right here, right now, because when we're talking about, you know, what black women are experiencing collectively and in general, we're not disregarding or disqualifying black boys and black men. That's important to point out, just because all of our people are so hurt, and as you describe, Mama Fi, so tender, and so we're very, very sensitive. And so when people start talking about hurt, well, that resonates with everybody. So then people are saying, well, what about me? You know, I was hurt. Nobody said nothing for me. Nobody came to my rescue, and blah, blah, blah. So we have that kind of a thing happening. And then that ends up taking the focus off of where we started and what this was from. So I just want to make sure that as we're talking about black women and girls, that we remember that this group is deliberately and has always been deliberately a marginalized group. So remember, we all know that black women are not listened to and black women are not believed, right? Like, even in the way that, you know, and I'm sure when Mama Fi said what she said, even before she named names, I think folk was thinking, wow, like, man, you let that happen? You let somebody do that?
Nobody said, this is all women on here. Nobody was thinking that.
I didn't.
Maybe men.
Maybe men, right. That's what I'm saying, maybe men. And I didn't let anything happen. I wasn't even aware of it. You know what I'm saying? But I wasn't in control of that. What I was in control of was my response. And my response had to honor. You see what I'm saying?
I asked him if he... You know, and he didn't know until we got home. He didn't know till days later.
Sure.
But it became, we had a big fight, you know, and it wasn't a fight, it was a fuss. And I know he could tell that I was acting differently. We had a big problem. And then finally I told him, you know, why I was feeling so bad. And then he was like, oh no, we gonna handle this. I said, just love me right now. Can you just give me what I need in this moment right now? I'm gonna say it when I'm ready. I'm not ready. I'm not ready to say this right now. I don't want it to be violent or anything. And Mama Ranika says, she said, I will not be hugging Peter Naked, and I'm letting him know. And is there any redeeming for a perpetrator, like a confession or public apology? And, you know, I won't ever deal with him ever again. But I think he could apologize and completely stop. Because I'm not even the only one that has said this about this man. You know, so it's not only me. It's not just me. And a lot of the time, it's not just one person. You know, this person has a deviant way of dealing. He may not even realize what he's doing. So yes, a public apology. I don't want to be there. I don't want to be anywhere around him. Right. But I think he could just stop, look at himself and say, I am no longer wielding this power in our community, because he's the community photographer in a lot of ways. He's always at every event and all these different things. So I know I'm not the only one. You know, I know I'm not the only one he's making feel uncomfortable and, you know, doing these things too. So yeah, I do think I mean, what do you think, Brother Shaq? I do think perpetrators, now it depends on the level of perpetration. I mean,
that's also, yes, I don't even know if perpetration is a word, but yes.
Because I wasn't raped or any of those things, or even molested. It was a disrespect violation where I was pulled into his crotch. And as a survivor, as somebody who had childhood sexual violation, it took me to, like, immediately, I was like, what the, you know, I was scared. I went backwards and reverted to some things. I mean, it was, and so that should happen to any woman. You know, you should never be pulled to a man's crotch, ever. But with me, since I had already experienced that stuff, I was like, what the fuck is going on? And I was out of balance for a while after that happened. Now, do I think he was like, I'm going to violate Mama Fire? No, I think he was like, shit, you know, this is just how I do. And how you do is wrong. It's wrong. It's not right. You know, and so in the other cases, I went into a situation where I thought I was doing music with someone. I walked into the studio and he asked me to take off my clothes. Immediately asked me to take off my clothes. Now, do I think he was like, I'm about to fuck her mind up and tell her to take the clothes off? No, I think he was just trying to exert power, you know, and I'm so grateful I got out of there. I was able to get out of there. That was a blessing. I could have, I don't know what could have happened. I was in there by myself. And then the third time, we taking a picture and the man gropes my behind while we taking a picture. We taking a picture like this. He slides his hand down and grabs my ass. And all of those things aren't rape. They're not rape, but it's wrong. All of it is wrong, especially because, I mean, when a man groped my ass, Brother Shaq had to find me. I was upstairs in a corner like this. And he's like, well, what's wrong with you? I mean, it happened like this. I couldn't even say nothing. I'm like, you know, I just froze. And so it's like, you know, all that shit is wrong. Every last thing was wrong that happened, and it won't ever happen again.
Well, I can assure you, you know, I've been as loving and reserved as I think that I can be. So it certainly can happen again, and play out the way that it has. You know what I'm saying, family? But I wanted to add too, Mom Five, because you were just talking about previous experiences that you had. That's one of the parts that I think we need to add into the conversation, just for people. One of the reasons why this is challenging too is because, as you explained, you know, very publicly, you've had a lifetime of these kinds of things happening. So what then happens is that when sisters who have all this previous experience of this happening say something, people are like, yeah, right, she tripping, she crazy, or you know, it must be her because this is always happening to her. You see, that's what we end up doing. We can't. We are not conditioned in America to listen to what black women say. And I'm saying this to you because my response to these situations resulted in me listening to what she said, in all of it, including don't respond to this, don't do anything.
Or respond to me.
Or respond to you, right? Don't respond outside of me. And so there's a tremendous value in listening to the black woman because she's just not listened to. And part of the reason why these kinds of things can happen is because folk know that nobody don't listen to what the black woman's saying because she always running them out about some bullshit. She always complaining. She always nagging. She always, whatever the case, you know, the way we've been socialized. People who have never experienced that still kind of think that in their head because that's what they've been told. And if they've had anything that reaffirms that, they're convinced that's just how it is. So it requires us to retrain our brains as it relates to listening to and responding to black women and girls. Another thing I wanted to bring up too is the way that you stress with young girls and of course grown women about their words having power.
Yes.
And the word no.
Yes.
And the way that no should be honored by everybody.
I also talk to young boys about
right.
Honoring no, that their no also means power, but honoring the no of girls and women.
Right. And that's huge too because, you know, we live in America and America's already told you can't take no for an answer. I mean, ooh, check that shit out. Woo. Check that socialization out. You can't take no for an answer. Like when they came on these shores and started violating the people who were already here and taking their land and taking all their things, raping and pillaging the land, the people didn't say, well, sure, it's cool. I'm sure they said no, they resisted, but you know, you can't take no for an answer. So there's part of the wiring is that you don't really mean no. What do they say? No means yes. Like, you got to look at how we are socialized and how very subtle and nuanced that it is. You got to look at that, right? And so when a black woman says, hey, this happened to me, we should listen to her and we should believe her. Now, I definitely need to add this because we need to have full balance in the conversation and full disclosure. Are there occasions and are there times when black women or black girls make up something and say something that isn't true? I'm fine.
Yeah.
That does happen, okay? It certainly happens.
I mean, I've personally never been a part of a case where somebody was making something up. Mm-hmm. I haven't. Yeah, I'm sure it does. But even that is wrong. Even that says that something is wrong. You know, like if there was a situation where a girl was making a case, something up, and it was obvious she was lying and these kind of things, I would sit with her and ask her what happened. What happened to you when you were a child? Or what happened to you? Because that is you're wrong too. You know what I'm saying? Something is wrong there for you to make up something against somebody. I don't know, Brother Shaq, have you ever seen that? Where a woman is lying about a certain case? A real, actual case that you have been a part of?
Well, I've gotten wind of it. I haven't been a part of it, directly, but I've gotten wind of it and people recanting, some of the stories because this is
about power.
This is about power. So sometimes it can be done and said because, again, when people are borrowing power to use on somebody else, and as you said, even somebody doing that is suggesting that something has happened, though it may not really be that. So we do acknowledge that. And I want to take it a step further since we're here and we're digging deeper to really get to the real shit here. So here's the scenario. Because there can be a woman who's not telling the truth, a man who listens to and believes. Because I have, you know what I have, as I'm thinking about it now, I remember some case when we were children where a brother was killed. He was set up because a sister said that he did something that he did not do, and he was actually killed, and he didn't do it. She just wanted to flex on him, and then it ended up going too far. So I do know that kind of thing, you know, it can also happen. That's more the exception. The real situation is when a woman says this, we should believe her. You know, we really should believe her and not interrogate her, but interrogate whoever did that to her. You know what I'm saying? And think about what is this really about? And it's difficult, and it's messy. You know, the whole thing is messy. That's why, you know, you don't want to do this. You don't want to get involved in it. You don't want to have no parts of this shit because it's messy. And so I just want to go a little further, Mama Five, with that. And so when a black man believes a black woman, do you all know that culturally, the way we've been socialized, that brother is seen as he is a sucker. When he listens to what the black woman or black girl says to him, and he honors that, or he believes her, he's a sucker. Now, I got wind. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because we're talking about saving face. I got wind that there was a thought by some folk who listened to me and just didn't really hear me. They thought they heard Mama Five. That somehow she had programmed me and got into my head, and what I was saying was just what she was saying or telling me to say.
Yeah.
And when I heard this, I thought, wow. Now, my ego, see this, I want to break this down. I want to say this real slow. I want to say it slow because I want you to be able to follow me to understand the process of this. So when I first heard it, my ego was like, the fuck? I got my own mind. Why would somebody think that? That sounds stupid. That's what my ego said. Then it was like, wait a minute. This ain't even about you. This is somebody saying that there is no way that a black man could love and honor what you're saying for real, that you must have wooed him or whipped him or done something, and he's not even being honest. He's just saying whatever because you've done something that it ain't even true. It ain't even authentic. That it's not even possible that a black man can have his own mind about something that supports the humanity and the human dignity of a black woman for real. That's a heavy-duty diss for both of us. But the diss is actually heavier on you because it's like, you know, you ain't shit.
Right.
You think this man up here saying this shit because you telling him to say it, but you know you ain't shit. So, I mean, this was told, I got wind of this, and this was from both a black woman and a black man.
Powerful people, too.
Powerful people.
Powerful community organizers.
So this is the perception of folk, right? That when a man listens to a woman, he's a fool, which validates what we really think about black women. See, that's what we're operating off of. That's what we really think. And these thoughts that we have are not even our own thoughts. This is part of the socialization and the programming. But we need to pay attention to, because brothers feel some kind of way when they're listening to sisters because, you know, they don't be telling the truth. They, you know, and see, if you're talking about a sister that's had a past experiences, things that have happened to her, man, you can't trust her, man. You know she did all this shit with all these dudes. You don't believe that. See, that's what ends up happening because we already don't value what she's saying. So when something serious does happen, we already know she can't be telling the truth, right? And then as a man, we're checking our own manhood if we believe her, like authentically believe her. So we may say, oh yeah, I hear you, but we don't really believe that. That's just how them women be acting because we got that little voice in our head. We've been socialized like that. So all of this is part of saving face. All of this is part of saving face and appearances and perceptions, not really touching the truth of it because that is so much larger than simply naming the names because that's things outside of ourselves. The real work happens internally. Like where am I in this? Like, you know, when she's talking about this, like I'm thinking, well, what didn't I see with this? And why was I complicit? Why didn't I pick up on this? Why did I consider this person a friend? Why did I think this person was cool? Why did I get good vibe from this person? Like, what did I miss? What was I ignoring? Right? Maybe I was ignoring something. Maybe I saw something, or let me go deeper, because this is True Love Movement Tuesdays, right?
Right.
So maybe my radar is different. Maybe like, and this is for many of our brothers who are watching, what we'll do at best is we'll think about our own mothers, our own wives, our own daughters or girlfriends or cousins or close family. But the rest of the black women, I mean, that's on them.
Right.
Somebody else, that's, you know what I'm saying?
Somebody else's watch.
Right.
Yeah.
And so in doing that, on the surface, it looks like, well, I mean, that's unreasonable. You can't have a, because you know, what do we say when a black man is supporting a woman or rescuing? He's a captain, save a hope. He is a captain, save a hope. Which basically says that whatever these hoes done got into, they on their own with it. Yeah. Why you going over there trying to save these hoes? And so that little voice plays in a lot of brothers' heads. So they say, well, that ain't my business. That ain't got nothing to do with me. Which creates an environment where some women are going to have these kinds of experiences, and then they'll have it like Mama Fire described, when brothers are present who are unaware. So these things challenge all of us to look at, where is my part in this? And then how can I improve? You know, and usually that's not an intellectual situation. Usually that's a heart thing. And so when we're talking about the black man, even though as black men we feel everything and we are the most sensitive, we certainly are. We often don't listen to our hearts that way. We've been taught not to trust our hearts.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? And the only time we quote unquote connect with our heart or have hearts is when it's time to do something violent, which is often cloaked in doing something brave. And otherwise we're disassociated. So there is a lot of heart work and internal work on the part of black men and boys that, you know, strengthen us, that improve us to take some of that burden off of black women and girls, because what we essentially do is, since we don't deal with none of that, they got to deal with that part of the relationship, or it doesn't happen at all. And they'll do it, they'll take that on, and then all the other things, because they're very interested in saving face. Not just their own, but for us too. So we can become a little more responsible because we have the capacity. But something inside of us has to inspire us to do that. We're not doing that because I'm saying that we should, and I'm not even imposing that. I would never do that on our brothers. I am saying, though, consider that apart from it being our girlfriends or our wives or our sisters or our mothers or our daughters, that black women and girls are actual human beings with all of the feelings and experiences that human beings have just being human. And they deserve to have a safe existence and feel safe while we're around. Like, one of the greatest things we can do, I think, and this is just my thoughts, because, you know, but I think that we can make sure black women feel safe when we're around them and not be predators. And then if we do something that is misunderstood, then create a space for that critique. Because sometimes we don't do it intentionally. Sometimes we go ahead.
I mean, I remember a time when we first started dating, and you would make like comments to the young women around. Like we were around a lot of little sisters, you know, and you'd be like, "Oh yeah, you sure look good," or you know, you know, you would make comments to them, and they weren't so much sexual as they were complimentary. Right. But it was awkward. I could see the women like being like, no, hey, you know. And I told you about it, and you fixed it right away. You were like, dang, I didn't know. I didn't know. Idea. You know, this is how I move through the world, thinking that women like that, thinking that women like.
Not even thinking of it.
Yeah, not wondering if they like it or not. I guess.
Never thought twice about it.
Yeah, I saw that. I would see them cringe. I would see them be like, "Oh, okay, Brother Shaq," you know. And I was like, "You can't be walking around with me like that." Definitely. You know, these sisters like that, they don't like that, Brother Shaq. You know, you can't do stuff like that. They don't want to be complimented in that way. They want to be seen as a whole human being, like you're smart and funny and, you know, and intelligent and great and stuff like that. Not how they look, you know, and how they, you know, or whatever. So thank you for doing that. And I like to thank all the brothers that never, ever look at me that way. You know, I think Brother Bakir never rubs me the wrong way. I think of all the brothers in the mosque who are so wonderful, never look at me like that. You know, I think of all the brothers I'm around that just don't do that kind of thing. They don't be licking their chops and looking at me and all these different things. Sisters, we know what that feels like. You know, like looking at like a piece of meat. And but there's so many brothers in New Orleans who don't do that, you know. And so shout out to all the brothers who just treat us like human beings, you know. Yes, you can see that a woman has beautiful sexual power, but that don't have nothing to do with you. That has everything to do with her, you know, and part of her beauty and part of her strength. So shout out to all the brothers.
That's right, and that the potential. That's the other part too. That was a beautiful segue. Thank you for doing that. As you described, you know, me and my behavior and what was normative behavior for me and what I moved through the world and how I did what I did and had always done, and never thinking anything of it or how it was impacting anyone or how they were feeling. I can explain that phenomenon in a way that I think everybody who's watching can understand, particularly black men. I didn't intend that. My intent was not to make anyone cringe or to make anybody uncomfortable. I want to start there with the intent, not because I'm defending anything that I did. Please understand that. That's not what I'm doing. I'm saying that part of the sensitivity that goes along with being a black man is having good intentions, the best of intentions. And the way we're educated and the way we're socialized, those good intentions don't always produce good outcomes for everybody. They may produce good outcomes for us, but they don't necessarily produce good outcomes for everybody. And so when a brother has a good intention or the best of intentions and doesn't mean no harm, right, and causes harm, that is a shocker to him. You know, like when she first said it to me, I didn't know, but at first I was very defensive about that because I'm like, whoa, that's not happening. And so I was very quick to respond to her like, oh no, you got this shit all wrong. Like you don't even know what you're talking about because I know what I'm doing. So you see, part of moving through the world as a man and as a black man, having a partial membership in patriarchy tells me that I'm right. That I'm right. Yeah. And if you're challenging what I'm saying or doing, then obviously you ain't right and you don't understand what right is. And so my first responsibility is to set you straight. See how that power dynamic goes? And so the sisters who I'm making uncomfortable, they already know that. So they're not about to say nothing. They'll just endure the discomfort temporarily. Yeah. And I don't know if they hold it against me or take it personally or what have you. And I don't even know. I think that's another thing too, Mama Fi. Maybe you can talk more about that, just in the way black men in New Orleans, but black men are socialized. That many times this behavior that we have, women have endured it for centuries.
Yeah.
And they've never liked it. They've always been very uncomfortable. But you save face. You just don't bring it up. You don't talk about that because, girl, he don't mean no harm. You know he don't mean no harm. You know that man ain't really mean that. He wasn't doing that. Yeah. And part of that is I think part of them is seeing the best in us. And I think the other part may be the understanding that it ain't worth talking about it. Bringing it up is going to cause a whole lot of problem, and you still ain't going to feel better. You just have to take it. You know, and black women implicitly get the message that they have to take it. That's why everybody always talking about how strong the black woman is, because she ain't got no choice, because everything is on her back. Yeah. So yeah, she's strong. She got to be strong simply to survive, but we don't really examine what is the source of sculpting those kinds of muscles. Not the source of her strength, but the source of sculpting her. The source of her strength is her love for her people. Yeah. That's the source of her strength, Mama.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and you know what, Brother Shaq, you were defensive.
Definitely.
But we worked it out, you know, and your behavior changed immediately.
Right.
And I saw the difference in a lot of the little sisters that, you know, you were talking to, and stuff like that. There's nothing wrong with telling a woman she's beautiful or telling a woman she's amazing, but I think, the treatment, and because I felt that. We've all felt that. Every woman on this timeline has felt what that feels like. You know, somebody, you know, just whatever that is. I don't know what the name of that is, but.
Well, it's just, I think it's awkward. I mean, it's whatever you say it is. I mean, I can't tell you, I can't call it. You know, sisters have to name those things, and I think we have to be receptive of that. Part of our challenge, family, as we round this out about saving faces, there is a presumption, even tonight, even on this broadcast, even with what was said, there is a presumption still in the hearts and minds of some folk who are watching it now or who will be looking, that there is this adversarial relationship between black women and black men. Mm-hmm. And that when a black woman is violated and she calls out the violation and the violator, that's some adversarial relationship against black men, or it's an indictment on all black men. No, it isn't. It isn't that at all. In so much the same way as when a black man does something that makes someone uncomfortable, you know, unintentionally does something that makes someone uncomfortable, that isn't quite a violation, but just creates a hostile or a difficult environment, that may also be unintentional. Like, so there is a real necessity to see the humanity in ourselves first, to recognize that in our brother and sister, to see that we're not adversarial whatsoever. There's no way we'll be able to continue on this planet being adversarial.
That's right.
That's not at all what this is. Mm-hmm. But there are some very real things that we have done to each other and that we do to each other for many kinds of reasons that we really got to interrogate, family. Like, we really got to look at, how were you socialized? Like, what kind of shit do you do? How many times have you done something and just nobody said it was a problem? You know what I'm saying? And because that'll give you the impression that it's all good if nobody's saying anything, right? But the next question is, or the next thing we have to deal with is, so when it does come to your attention, and when it is brought to your attention, how do you respond to it? How do you respond to it? Are you able to see the humanity in the person who's telling you? Or are you more focused on defending your position in it? If you're more focused on defending your position in it, that points to a socialization of invalidating what someone is saying, or the truth of what somebody else is saying. And some of it has to do too with being in denial that no, I couldn't have done that because I didn't mean to do that. So that just didn't happen. So you're saying that shit didn't happen, but that don't mean it didn't fucking happen to that person. And then because we understand about histories, sometimes it could be amplified because of things that people have experienced already in their lives. So there isn't a black person that we know that's watching this or who will watch this who isn't hurt or who hasn't been hurt, and likely by somebody black. So we're always saying to be gentle with our people because some shit done happened to all of us. And sometimes we rub up against that wound and we re-stimulate that trauma. We hurt them again, even accidentally. And so we can make amends. We can certainly apologize and then correct the behavior by not doing it again.
Yes.
If we are sincere, we can do that.
And Sister Nzinga, thank you for sharing. She said, for the record, Brother Shaq, for the record, Brother Shaq, you have never made me, my staff, or my babies feel uncomfortable. You have always been very respectful to the degree that my staff felt very comfortable on the days you worked in the program because there was a man available to walk them to the car and assisted in making sure our babies got home safely. I can't say that about other partners. Their partnership was terminated. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
He's a stand-up brother, y'all, and what's so beautiful is that he takes feedback, to be better.
Well, I think I'm coming to and really embracing authentically. I say out loud, truthfully, I perceive the black woman as our teacher. It's all about teachers, and you my teacher. I see that, and I know we teach each other.
Yeah.
But in terms of something like this, in terms of how, as a black man, I'm relating to black women or a black woman, can't nobody really tell me that except them. You know what I'm saying? So if the black woman says, blah, 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 then that's got to be what it is. Because, if you want to know if you're a good man or not, a black woman is going to have to tell you that. Because what it is that we're defining as good black men, as black men, is part of some other shit. Don't make us bad people, but our understanding or orientation to whatever goodness isn't necessarily rooted in what the black woman say. So I'm saying that if you want to check where you at, brothers, ask the black woman, well, what do you think? And then what qualifies a good man, and what qualifies me as a good man, and then what could I do to be a better man? See, that is a very vulnerable thing to ask, and I would like to think that a great many black man would be willing to do that, because that's part of the healing work we're doing. But it has been my experience from being in many different kinds of environments that the last thing that a black man is eager to ask a black woman is, what can I do for you? How can I help you? Those are not questions that brothers typically want to ask because she's going to answer. And when she answers, we may or may not have the capacity to do it. So a lot of times we don't ask the question because we don't want to deal with the fact that I might not be able to be what she needs me to be. I might not be able to do what she needs me to do, at least in this moment. I would rather not be reminded of that. I'm not going to touch that. So encouraging our sisters to tell us what it is, and then us doing that shit. That has to do, and no woman makes you do that, brothers. No woman, this woman don't make me do nothing. How could she make me do, if she's making me do something, that means I've given her power over me. And that means, what am I doing with my own power?
And why would I do that to anyone?
And why would
I want his beautiful power that it is to shine.
Right. We don't have to be motivated. We can be inspired after we've done some internal work. There's a lot to do in that, family. I mean, there's a whole lot, and that's not the cultural norm. But we're at a different time of expansion, and these cultural norms have gotten us to these kinds of conversations. These cultural norms have gotten us to talking about documentaries and having documentaries and all of these hurt feelings, and then, you know, not saving face, and then naming names, and then people saying, you know, I'm tired of the bullshit. I'm tired of being fucked over, and I'm gonna respect myself, because that's really what's boiled down to, family. It's like people are saying, well, some of us is gonna have to respect me. It might as well be me.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? So, but we don't have to be in opposition to one another. Like, we really can respect ourselves first, and for real. Like, if you really respect yourself, it ain't hard to respect other people. And if other folks say, hey, I felt like that was disrespectful, or I didn't like that, well, we can respect that. Because people know what's real for them, even if we didn't intend to. People know what's real for them. And anybody watching and listening, if I have offended you, then I would ask for your, my apologies. You know, I would ask for your forgiveness, because it wasn't a deliberate offense. It really wasn't I had been raised in America. I've been socialized in America. I was a mannish little boy. You know, I've been flirting my whole life. You know, I have no doubt said some things that, you know, maybe weren't as severe as some other things, but maybe not the right thing to say, because maybe I didn't have the right thought, because that thought wasn't connected to the right kind of heart. You know, so in the course of my evolution, if I have, I apologize publicly to you. And that goes for anybody. Our intention is not to violate, offend, upset, and divide our people.
Right.
But in honoring ourselves and respecting ourselves, we have to tell the truth.
Yes.
We all do. We don't have to save face. We have to tell the truth,
Yeah.
family. What you say, Malphite?
I say that's enough said.
Enough said. So, family, shout out to everybody who has joined us. I see my brother Christopher Williams came in there.
Yay, we got a brother.
We got Amina. Amina's up there too.
All right, hey sister.
You know, we got a few folks still hanging in there. Shout out to, of course, Tracy Elizabeth and everybody who was with us, Ronika, and Zinga.
Shantice,
right.
Natasha, love y'all.
Everybody who was with us and watch this later and share this and talk about it. You know, just like that whole documentary, we are looking for creating something where we don't have to have those kinds of things, where there's not a need for a documentary to showcase, you know, certain behavior, but we don't have to try to call people out, or we don't have to save face or be fake. We can just be our authentically good selves, and whatever contaminant that we have in us to really deal with and resolve that, and get help if we need it, so that we can be viable members of our community.
Yes.
It's work. I ain't gonna lie, it's work, and it's not easy, and it's not comfortable. It's certainly not comfortable. But for all of us who are uncomfortable, I would offer this, because I have never been a black woman. But I can only imagine how uncomfortable black women are, and black girls. I have never encountered a black woman who said, because sometimes I ask on fire, you know, we have different kind of scenarios where I ask, and I've been in so many situations and places where I asked black people where they felt safe. And when I asked a black woman, one of the places that she said maybe at home, and maybe with certain members of her family. But that was it. That was the only two references she could say she felt safe, and it was still maybe. You know what they don't mention, family? They don't mention right then and there. Meaning, while I'm saying this and asking this, they don't even feel safe right then and there. And that's where I'm at. And no, I'm not going to do them anything, but how comfortable can you be as a human being when you don't feel safe nowhere? And I know black people across the board. That's not unique to black women. But I can say with my experience externally that I have not encountered a black woman that said, you know, she felt safe in more than 3 places.
Yeah.
You know. And
well, I feel safe with you, babe.
Right. And I'm glad that you do. And I think that we can create that environment with our sisters so when they see us, they can feel safe and know that we're not going to do them something. Let that be a gift we give them. You know, I guess that's better than a compliment. That I ain't going to do you nothing and I ain't going to let nothing happen to you.
That's right. There's music to our ears,
you know, and that's something that we can do and not be complicit in that behavior. So if we got any questions before we get out of here, and Zinga says somebody's tired.
That's me. That's what she's saying. At the time I had my head down.
Yeah, that's usually the time of the show. That's the indicator right there.
Well, we did a whole 2 hours and 25 minutes.
2 hours and some change.
Wow, this is a good show though, y'all. Thank you for supporting me, sisters. All my sisters that was like, thank you for sharing. You know, and I appreciate that.
Right. And just go to show you, fellas, that, you know, the sisters are sitting on all kinds of things and have endured all kinds of things that we can't even imagine. And that as a black man, I tell you, maybe this is a great way to leave it. If as black men, we all, you know, even when I talk to brothers or listen to brothers, one of the oddest conversations, not really, but at least it starts off awkward for black men, is talking about how you love yourself as a black man. And I will say most black men will verbalize, man, I don't know what the fuck you talking about, bro. Like, I don't know how to love myself. That ain't real. This is what they'll say. So then what I say is, listen, I mean, I can tell you what I've done, but then what I say to them is that if you want to know how to love yourself, bro, all you got to do is look at the way black women love us. That is what I mean when I say she is our teacher. The black woman loves us through all of our shit. You know what I'm saying? The black woman loves us through all our shortcomings, broken promises, disrespecting her, lying to her, doing foul shit. Black women love us through all of that. And always has. They love us through all the lies we tell. They love us through all of this shit. They continue to love us. Now that don't mean that everything they say is sweet, but they don't throw us away. Brothers, we know that if she says something we don't like, and she hurt our feeling, we out the door. We done. So let's look at how typically that's how we do that and take their lead. It's okay to be led. It's all right see, there's something in your mind that say, man, black woman can't lead me. Some of you fools been reading that Bible talking about Eve ate the apple and that's why we like this. That's another show. But that's not true. And that sets us apart from ourselves. To the extent that we disrespect and dishonor black women and girls, all of from which we have all come from, is to the extent that we dishonor and disrespect ourselves. So let's look at it like that. That it's not something apart. It's not something extra to do. It's to want something that we really need to do, family. So, yeah, Mama Fi, I had that.
I want to just say a couple of announcements. Friday, I have a show at Sydney Saloon with, what is it called, baby? We're going to put the flyer up in the feed. But it's from 6 to 9 over at Sydney Saloon. I'm going to be doing some songs from Late Bloomer.
Right.
And that's on Friday. And then we're going to be doing a homeschooling, just a homeschool networking event. So that, because there's a lot of drama going on with the charter schools, and if some people are interested in homeschooling their children, this is not enroll your child in homeschool. This is just an understanding of homeschool, that you can homeschool your child like right now. Some understanding of a curriculum and that kind of thing too. So yeah, I'll be looking out for that flyer as well.
And we've actually, that's not a new thing. That's something
we've done it 100 times.
There's there's a video, we'll put that one in the link too, about when I did a workshop on that for what manifested maybe, I don't know, 2015, something like that. And since then there have been a number of homeschools that were born, you know, right before that and then even thereafter.
Yeah.
And you know, we're still working on, as a people, figuring out how to reorient ourselves. I mean, we experienced a lot of shit for 249 years on the plantation, for 154 years off of it, that, you know, it's not really surprising that we're in this condition, family. Where else could we be? But we are at a very unique time in our history in evolution in America, where we're climbing out of that. And we're reckoning with difficult things like this. We're looking at how we're dealing with one another. We're looking at what unity looks like for real. We're looking at our personal responsibility. We're looking at the whole Nguzo Saba for real. And we're not worried about whatever they said that Malana Karenga did or didn't do, and looking at the principles to say, hey, is this useful to us or not? Like, that's because even in the spirit of a thing that's good is good, but it ain't nothing new, and it does require us to deliberately engage. So for 2019, you know, this is true loving yourself. True love yourself, Mama Fire. As you, that's your, you know, you put that in there. That's our hashtag. True love yourself.
And then we need you well.
We need you well.
Yeah, that was yours.
That was mine. Because until we really work on it, we're still going to be a danger to ourselves and each other. And that's not what we want to do. We really want to be good to ourselves, for ourselves, and to our people. And that requires a lot of work and evolution and shaking off a lot of shit that's been put on us. So I'm Brother Shaq.
And Mama Fire.
For True Love Movement Tuesday. Stay tuned for the for True Love Movement Hour on Saturday. We'll drop the flyers in the feed. Y'all share the show with people you respect. Think about what we talked about. See where you sit in it. And, you know, be real with you. And that'll cause you to be real with other folks, family. So, wholeness.
Wholeness. Love y'all.
Let's see here, Mama Fire. Let me see what I can do.
I'm gonna go take me a nice hot spiritual bath and get myself in the water and come out better.
Right on.
Feeling good.
Bing.